Welcome to State of Ed, a podcast about education inside the classroom and out. My name is Marc.
And I'm Nick Simone.
How you doing today, Nick?
I'm doing very well. Looking forward to this. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's been a while since we have gotten together for a podcast. We, in the interim, have been pursuing our PhDs, and I've also taken some time to write a book, which is coming out in June. So I'm very much looking forward to that. But I'm also happy to be back here on the podcast with you. And today we're very, very fortunate to be joined by an educator halfway around the world, or more than halfway around the world. Lainey Morgan is here with us. And Lainey, welcome to State of Ed podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
So can you tell us a little bit about your journey and how you wound up teaching at the American School in Hong Kong?
It's quite a long journey, so I'll give you the brief version. But my family, when I was growing up, I moved around a lot. And when I was in university, my parents moved to China. My father was doing a job over in China. And so when I graduated from my master's, when my husband and I got married, we just wanted to spend 1 year overseas. We promised his parents, don't worry, it's just 1 year. And we moved overseas to China teaching English for a year. And just a few months into being in China, in southern China, we loved it. And so we ended up becoming certified teachers, and then we moved into the international school system.
So what is the international school system for those of us who spent our careers here in the United States and have very little familiarity, and I'm really describing myself,
And
of
me
that
as well.
system?
So, for example, the city that I lived in was Shenzhen, China, which has 15, 16 million people. You probably never heard of it, but it's right across from Hong Kong. Its economy is huge. It's where your iPhone, part of it comes from. It's an amazing city. So they have a public school system where the local students go. And if you're a foreigner, then you can't go to that public school system. You have to have the local residency. And you probably wouldn't want to either, because unless your children have grown there and speak Mandarin, then they won't fit in. So companies will provide tuition for the families that live there to go to an international school. So it's foreign teachers, it's American curriculum or British curriculum or IB curriculum. Schools can be anywhere between 100 students to 2,000 students. A major city can have between 2 and 15 international schools. So yeah, it's mostly for the expat community, but more and more, and I'm speaking from my experience in China, more and more, if a Chinese family, if they happen to hold another passport, they want their children to get a Western education, they can sign up and enroll in an international school as well.
I'm kind of taking that all in because I've seen all the ads, when we were looking for jobs as young teachers, you would see the listings for all of the, international schools, and you've kind of given quite an explanation that I was never aware of, because now I've had a lot of my students, I teach high school, and I know they've worked in international schools, but I'm just, in terms of the curriculum, you bringing up the IB program, how much does that impact, what's being taught, and is it all from K through 12?
So the current school that I'm at right now, the American School Hong Kong, they do not have the IB curriculum in the primary years, but they are starting their high school in the fall, and they will have the IB diploma. My schools in China, they did have the PYP. So it just depends on the school, what direction they want to go. It seems like in China, the IB school system is becoming more of a status symbol. So the schools that I've been a part of have wanted to have that authorization.
So I'm imagining that your school has to go through the same credentialing as an American school would in terms of having curriculum approved and training teachers, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. And we have to have all those really exciting curriculum meetings and accreditation meetings. Yeah. So we are a Common Core. We do the Common Core curriculum, American curriculum, and then that will be the IB diploma will be offered whenever we have a graduating class.
How has that been received? Because we have switched over to the Common Core curriculum here in the States and in New York in particular, where Nick and I both are educators. How has the Common Core been received in the international school community?
I've not heard anyone have a negative thing to say about it, and I have come
How
from it from
closely are
your
you listening?
perspective. No, how closely am I listening?
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
No. Because I was in the States. Oh, I don't know when it was all rolled out, but the last time I lived there was about 12 years ago, and I remember all the negative feedback from it, and I would see it on my Facebook, how tricky the math was. And
Mm-hmm.
now that I'm teaching it in grade 1, and it is quite tricky to teach it. It's different than how I learned, but I see the benefit of being able to break apart numbers and put them back together in different
Mm-hmm.
ways. I haven't, from what I've seen on Facebook and the negative perspective towards the Common Core, I have never felt that over here, being in Hong Kong, somebody having that perspective.
Well, what type of administrative staff do you have in the school?
We have a head of school. He's from Canada, and he's one of the reasons why I wanted to join the school. And that was one of the things, if we were going to talk about hiring later on, was know who you'll be working for. So his reputation has preceded him, and had he worked at the school in Hong Kong, had he worked at a school in another country, I would have wanted to be at his school. So we have a head of school, and we have an assistant principal, and our school is growing. So next year she will be the principal. And we have a literacy coach, and next year we'll have a math coach and learning support.
And that is all to service how many students?
Our school right now is 220.
And all primary age?
Yes, we go
age?
K through 6 right now. Our school's 3 years old.
Wow. Is it a brand new building, or is it an older building that's been repurposed?
It's an
as a
older
school?
building. It was a local school, and it's been repurposed, and we have most of the floors renovated, but we have space to grow. We have the top 3 floors of the building that haven't been touched yet.
Oh, wow. So they're
It's
expecting
kind
to...
of, the kids talk about the spooky upstairs. Yeah.
So I'm assuming they're expecting
potential.
that the school is going to grow.
Yes,
into the
we're
future.
opening the high school in the fall. Yeah. It's exciting to be a part of that.
So then what kind of technology is available in this repurposed or, reconfigured building that you're working in?
I think it's fantastic. It's the best as far as the schools that I've worked at. We are a one-to-one program, so we have iPads from K through grade 3, one-to-one, and then MacBooks grade 4 and up. We have Apple TVs in the classroom. Any app that I've needed, we've either had it or I've requested it and they've provided it. It's well resourced.
Wow, I wish we had we had the MacBooks.
Yeah.
Because we have the iPads in our district. But without the keyboard, sometimes it makes it a little bit challenging.
Mm-hmm. And my schools in China, we've had one-to-one iPads, but the students have brought them from home and they've taken them back. And then another school, it was they could either bring them in, or we have a set of shared iPads that you can check out and use. But this school's one-to-one. They purchase the
nice.
iPads and they keep them at the school, and the school manages them. It's been a really good system.
How does that compare to the technology that the students who are attending the public schools in China or Hong Kong are receiving?
I don't know. I haven't been in the public school system enough to know.
Interesting. So there's no articulation or no kind of peeking behind the curtain, so to speak. Pardon the pun.
I'm just not experienced with that. No.
And what kind of challenges are you facing as an educator who's trying to implement these digital tools into your instruction?
Challenges that I've faced with technology in the classroom. So I've spent the last 10 years in China, and there's a lot that's blocked over there. You don't have access to Google. So unless your school has a solid VPN and access to Western internet, then you're always going to have the challenges of, can I access this today? So can I find this whenever I'm Binging it? And then Bing went down a couple weeks ago. I don't face that in Hong Kong. We do have that access to the Western internet, but it really changes things when you have to, on your own private VPN at home, download the YouTube videos that you want to show in class, so then you can take it to class and use it. And then my school last year, I worked in Xi'an, China, and the internet itself was really spotty. So you can try to be dependent and plan a lesson, but you always had to have a plan B because maybe your internet went out for the hour or for the week, and then you had no access to anything. So yeah, challenge is connectability and access to internet. Yeah.
So how does morale stay high in the break room when the politics of, a communist government meeting a free and democratized open internet could potentially get in the way of what you're planning and how you're trying to instruct your kids?
I think for those of us who have chosen to work in China, we know that's what we've signed up for. So there's really no point in sitting there saying, oh, I can't connect to Google today, when you know you're not going to be able to connect to Google unless you have a VPN. I think the morale is lower when you know that there is a way around it. If you're working for a school system, you know all they have to do is purchase a VPN. And if they choose not to use their funds on that, then that's where the complaining and morale can take a bit of a dive. Because we see the benefit of being able to have that access in the classroom, whether or not the admin sees it is another thing.
How expensive is it to get a VPN, and what other challenges are there?
School-wide, I don't know. What consistent school-wide letting everybody access at the same time, I don't know what that cost would be. But for me, whenever I would have a private one for my own use, it would be maybe about $10 a month. And even then, and I've been away from this VPN issue since living in Hong Kong, and I think back to it. You have groups on WeChat. It's like a WhatsApp in China, or if we do access Facebook, everybody's always talking about which VPN can you connect to. Oh, is Tokyo good today, or is Los Angeles good today? Or people say, don't talk about that because they're monitoring the Facebook groups or the WeChat groups. So even if you have a VPN, they're always on top of it, and they're always trying to shut down where you're connected to. So even if you purchase the VPN, it's not a guarantee. If they have some important government meetings going on, your access can be wiped out completely for an entire week. And I mean, there goes your Gmail. No access to email for a week. It's pretty rough.
So the government is actively trying to prevent the use of them as well.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like they know what's going on and they're turning their head away from it because they have other things to deal with. When they want to, they can shut it down. It's just whether or not they want to this week.
How does that affect the children? Because in America, kids are obsessed with their phones. So how is that impacting the kids, and are they equally as obsessed with their devices?
Yes and no. I teach lower primary, and so I feel like my kids haven't quite been exposed to the ability to be addicted to the iPad. And it's nice also because it's their iPad, it's the student's iPad, but we keep it at school. And we've only let them take it home for Christmas break so far. So when I speak to my students, there are a few of them that say that they have a second iPad at home, but most of them, I don't think they do. And then at school, we really don't have the time for them to just be playing around on it. There's just too much to cover, too much learning to do.
So how regimented is your day? Because I know that here in America, they have taken elementary schools and have have created such a rigid structure that many elementary school educators are dismayed, to put it very, you know, easily or mildly rather, that they have lost a lot of the freedom and the time to be creative and emphasize creativity in the classroom. Are you experiencing similar things in your primary school?
I think I feel some of that. So I came from the IB system in China, where our school day, one of them went till 5 p.m. and one of them went till 4 p.m. And so I had a lot more time on my hands to be creative in the classroom. And then coming here to Hong Kong, the school day ends at 2:30. And the Common Core curriculum, there's a lot of standards to get through. So it was quite an adjustment. I felt like I was always rushing my kids to the next thing. But part of that was just me getting used to the program. Now that I'm more than halfway through the school year, we're on the home stretch, yay! I feel like I see the ability to be creative with them. I just have to think outside the box. And it can be done, but they still have time in their school day. They go off to Chinese. They have a Chinese lesson 5 days a week. They've got music twice, PE 3 times, art twice. So there's time. We just can't waste it.
So you have freedom with your lesson planning. It's not as if everything is, a script that you need to follow.
No, it can be scripted if you want it to be, but it's not required that we follow that script. We can take that and add our own twist to it, just as long as the standard is covered. I mean, we're a STEAM school, and I've enjoyed that, and we have a good curriculum. It's a good basis, but sometimes I feel like, wow, we're looking at this video again and talking about this video again to learn this. Why don't we do something else in the classroom today where we're actually making something? So we end up in the same place, but I think my kids maybe have a bit more fun.
And what about on the assessment side? What kind of accountability is in place for teachers and kids?
We have we have quizzes, formative assessments throughout a unit. We have a mid-unit assessment, an end-of-unit summative assessment, and then we have the map testing. We do map testing twice a year.
And what is that?
They tell me you all know what that is. They say
they lie.
They say it's a national. It's a national test from America, and we do it over here too. I could Google it really fast if you needed me to.
No, it's okay.
But we compare our scores with the scores that come out from the States.
Oh, okay. So it's basically the equivalent of the international, the quote unquote international report card test, so to speak. That's interesting. My experiences with that test have been kind of mixed. We had a number of students who just didn't want to take that test because there's been an opt-out movement here where parents don't want their kids to take any more tests than they're required to, essentially. And it got me wondering, well, if there is an opt-out movement with these kinds of tests also, then how is that perhaps impacting the results of the findings? And are we as a nation in America comparatively as low as we currently seem to be? And are all of our kids taking the test is an accurate reflection of really how we're all doing? I never really thought about it from that perspective until I was involved in administering it in my school as a building administrator. So, and I realized how many kids aren't taking it. And a lot of those kids were really top-notch, high-flying kids. So it got me thinking about that from that perspective.
Is there a strong connection with all of the international schools in China, or do you each work very independently?
It's fairly independent, really? Unless you are with a network of schools. There's a couple Cognita schools, and there's a couple Nord Anglia schools that I even know that they have schools in the States. We have the American school is managed by ESOL Education, and there's a few schools throughout the Middle East and now in Hong Kong. So we have sister schools, but the schools themselves are fairly independent. But the educators, we all get together once every 2 months or so, if we choose to. We have meetings and can meet together. It's great.
Is that a formal conference or is it an informal gathering?
We just had a major conference this past March. It's the 21st Century Learning Conference, and there's a few of them. They have a major one in Hong Kong in March, and then they put on smaller teach meets, and they meet about once every 2 months, and it's 5-minute presentations for anybody who wants to present. Usually 10 or so people present, and then we mingle. And then there's the informal Pub PD Asia, and it's putting the social back into social media, where everybody on Twitter, somebody is moderating the chat. We have a set of 5 questions, but we all go through. It's a Twitter chat, but we're all at a pub. So there's, I don't know, dozens of pubs throughout Asia that meet at the same time. And it's great. So
any way to get an American parallel to that, and if I can get an invite,
I think it's maybe wonderful. Started in Canada, and then hence we're Pub PD Asia. We're the breakoff group.
The larger conferences, where are they held?
This one is held in Hong Kong.
Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm. But there's conferences in Bangkok that they go to. Conferences in major cities in China. Nanjing, I think, has one.
So when you receive professional development, are you getting ESOL professional development? Are you getting just the professional development based on what your headmaster or your assistant principal deem important for your particular school?
It's a mix of both. So our school is a newer school, and we're trying to really solidify in our understanding of STEAM. So this past school year, they did bring in somebody that did workshops on STEAM and the design cycle. So we had that, and then also ESOL provides funds, and we can use those funds however we want, if it's an online class, or I used it this year to go to that conference in Hong Kong. People have flown to other places and gone to workshops there. So I do think it's a good balance of both. All of us at the school, we're on the same page with this bit of PD, but also we have the freedom to pursue our own interests.
And does your faculty change on a year-by-year basis?
Out of 27, 3 are not coming back, so 3 are not returning. So I really think it's a high retention rate, especially for an international school. You've got to think international schools are a bit more transient.
I would think so, for sure. Now, you had taught in America for a brief period.
A brief period, yes.
If I'm not mistaken. So how would you compare just the culture of the classroom in America to the culture of the classroom that you're experiencing in Hong Kong?
I feel like I don't have a great understanding, because when I worked in America, I worked part-time, and I was a part-time high school English teacher. So that's completely different to what my position is now. But I will say, for being a first-year teacher in America, I was not supported at all. I felt like I was just thrown in there, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I do feel like, from what I see from my friends in the States that are teachers, they're constantly talking about how much they have to spend on their own classroom supplies. And it shocks me, because the only time that I've not gotten reimbursed for something that I've spent is just because I didn't save the receipt, and I didn't want to go through the hassle of turning it in. So that's a huge difference.
Wow. What about parents and your interaction with them? Any differences between America and Hong Kong?
Yes. I feel like overall parents are quite trusting here. There's some of them that are a little bit overprotective of their child, and maybe this is different than the States, but sometimes I'll get a picture and they'll send pictures of scratches, like my child came home with this scratch, and then I get the photo evidence of the scratch, and I think, well, it was just kids being kids. But overall, I feel like they're quite trusting and supportive.
Yeah, I think the overprotective parent is an international phenomenon at this point in the 21st century.
Yeah.
there was a recent article in the New York Times about snowplow parents. I don't know if you had a chance to
Yes,
catch
I did
that.
see that.
So I think that really speaks to kind of what you're talking about.
I would think, though, that they would be even more protective over here. I'm trying to think if I were paying the tuition that if I were paying this tuition, because you do have foreign companies that bring foreign families over here, and then the foreign company likely pays for some, if not all. But then you've got your nationals who have chosen to pay for that. And I think if I were paying that amount, I would want more of a say. So to know that the parents are still quite trusting, even though they're spending that money, I appreciate our parents.
And that speaks to the reputation of your school and the people who are leading your school. And keep your fingers crossed that doesn't change, because those kinds of things can change like the wind.
I know.
So for young aspiring teachers in America, this is something you would definitely recommend to them?
For sure. I have tried to explain to people, come overseas, really. There are challenges for sure. But do your homework. There's a couple websites. You can check out schools. But give it a shot. Even if you... So I was in China and I started my own family. And so now it's not just me. It's me and my family. And we're still over here. It's a great adventure. Know what you're getting into. But if you are open to change and you want to see the world, do your homework and then come on over. It's a great experience.
And you have a great opportunity to see the East and all of the majesty of the Pacific and the islands and everything else. I'd imagine you probably take advantage of that.
Yes, and I hesitate on saying, and this is what you can do, and these are all the benefits, because that's not why I do it. But let me tell you about the benefits. So if you get hired at a reputable school, they will fly you out here. They will provide you money. Likely, they will provide you money to help set up your flat. They'll provide your health insurance. You'll get paid for 12 months out of the school year. You'll have your local holidays, but they're also an international school, so you'll have your international holidays as well. So I feel like we have 9 weeks of school left, but 5 of those weeks are 4-day weeks, just because there's so many holidays, which when you're trying to get things done, that can be a little bit frustrating. But my housing is paid for, and some schools, they'll pay for flights each year for you and your dependents to go back to your home. And I think I mentioned insurance. Health insurance is paid for. Some schools will even pay for your local taxes. It really can be a great setup. So I don't go back to the States for Christmas, but I've got several colleagues that go back for 7 weeks in the summertime. They go back for 2 weeks at Christmas, and I feel like they see their families more than maybe people that live in America and live on the other side of it. So yeah, and we have our spring break right now, and I just came back from Thailand. My colleagues went to Sri Lanka, England on this holiday, Hawaii. For Christmas, my family went to New Zealand. We went to Australia last Christmas. We love the Philippines. I mean, it's just 2-hour flights here and there. It's a great experience.
I'm excited if I can get to Philadelphia.
I say not extensively, but once I start thinking about it, it is probably more than the average person, yes. We did a big road trip across China before we left it this past year. Been to Beijing, Harbin for the Ice Festival, Shanghai, Guilin, and Avatar. Do you remember Avatar, the floating mountains in Avatar? It's from a place called Zhangjiajie, and that was our last trip in China. Absolutely gorgeous.
Can you take us through the changes that you're seeing in China? Because we only really read about them here, but what about your practical experience?
Okay, so I was speaking to my mother today. My mother lives in Shenzhen, She volunteers in an orphanage. She does amazing work there. She was telling me she has a friend that has purchased an apartment on the outskirts of the city, not even downtown, on the outskirts. She has had that tiny apartment for 10 years, this friend, and it has gone up in value 100,000 US dollars per year. So on the outskirts. So 10 years, you can imagine. It's China speed is what we call it. You look out your window, we joke, you look out your window and the building under construction next door has added 1 story per night. The changes are unreal.
That's incredible.
So when people complain about China, about the pollution or people in poverty, I say, yes, that's true, but the changes that they're making in their country, they're making significant changes in a very short amount of time.
Are there concerns there, and I'm only basing this on what I've read about China, are there concerns there about the future in terms of being able to sustain the aging, the growing aging population with a relatively smaller, younger population as a result of the one-child policy?
Yes, and I don't know what their solution will be for that. So now it's a two-child policy, but it's not super popular. It doesn't seem, because if you live in the city, it's expensive, and both parents need to work, and they don't want the woman to go on maternity again. So it might be legal, but it's still not quite practical.
It just seems like a slow motion, like train wreck that's going to happen at some point. Just in terms
there
of being able to
there are several things
their...
in China that you think, oh, we're on the tipping point. You can tell it's on the tipping point. Which way is it going to go? So that's one of them.
Do you read Thomas Friedman by any
No,
chance?
I don't. No.
Oh, because he's written
Should
a lot
I?
about this. I think you'd find him fascinating. I mean, Nick and I are pretty much like disciples of Thomas Friedman in our own minds. But he's written a lot about this extensively, in particular India and China, and this very thing. And he would love that phrase, China speed. That just seems like the perfect title for one of his columns.
Yeah.
Don't you think, Nick?
Oh, absolutely. I teach a class. One of the topics is the Chinese political system. It's an AP class that covers the political systems of 6 different countries, and China is one of them. So just as I'm listening to you, this is all information I can use. And do you have any insight into how the people there feel about Xi Jinping and, I mean, his apparent lifetime presidency?
Yes. I I think they are happy with him, and they are proud to be Chinese.
Yeah, that's the sense that I get from what I read.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Well, Lainey, we can't thank you enough for sharing your experiences with us and giving us a perspective that we only typically get in newspapers or magazines or some kind of news broadcast, and but to be able to speak to you and hear about your first person account. You're a very good saleswoman for the international school system.
Let me add something, because I do think it is important, because China is growing at China speed, and schools know that there is a wealth of opportunity over here to make money. There are loads of international schools that are popping up that just want to make money. So a good way to do your homework, how I found my jobs teaching, is through Search Associates. It's a recruitment agency. So there's Search Associates is very popular, and also International School Services. And both of them are decades old, highly established, very reputable, and they host job fairs throughout the world. And I recommend going through one of those companies. It takes a while to get your profile up and running, and keep in mind that recruitment happens early. So for the fall, pretty much they've already hired. By January, schools overseas, if it's a reputable school, they have hired their positions for the fall back in January. So if you're considering an international position, Once the school year starts in September, start working on your profile, have it done by October, request an invitation to a fair by November, and plan on being at a fair in January.
Provide me with those links. I'll be happy to put them on our show notes for the episode on the website. Again, Lainey, thank you so much. You really gave us such an insight as to what's going on the other side of the world. And it sounds like there are many similar things and similar successes and similar challenges, and of course some very unique challenges that you're experiencing. And it sounds like an incredible experience that you're having there.
Yeah, it really is.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Just a little wrap up here. You can follow our podcast on Apple Podcasts, and you can also find us on the web at stateofedpodcast.com, where you'll also find links to what we've discussed today, including the links that Lainey was just mentioning. You could also follow us on Twitter at SOE Podcast, and if you're interested, you can pick up a copy of my upcoming book, Forward Fast, Making Sense of Education in an Era of Rapid Change, literally wherever books are sold, including Amazon.com, obviously. And you can also follow me individually at Marcus6 on Twitter or Marcus6.com. So thank you so much, Lainey. And Nick, it's great to be back on the podcast with you. And I'm looking forward to our new season of podcasts.
Very much so. Thanks, everyone.